The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Mark H. Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Glad to have you with us again, Mark.
I'm glad to be with you. It's an honor to be with you.
Well, this is the time when the National Urban League has issued their annual State of Black America report. It's kind of a benchmark for where black folks are, and here we are in 2007. I won't ask you how far we've gone since 1997, but tell us about the focus of this year's State of Black America report.
This year's focus, and I appreciate 30 years we've been doing the report. It was created and founded by Vernon Jordan, our former president, great president of the National Urban League in the 70s, and annually we've reported on the state of Black America. This year our focus is on the black male, our boys and our men, and it is the continuation of work that began when I became president of the league in 2003 to really focus on the crisis of black men in America, boys and young black men in America. So this is how I like to look at it, because we've got to avoid the temptation of simply diagnosing the problem. We have to do that. We've got an obligation to do it, and the problem and the crisis is deep. But we wanted to do two other things. One, I want to highlight the great success stories.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, because so often when we talk about the conditions of black, we talk about how poor things are, other than the rich people. But your point is there are many people right in the middle who are living a great life and making great contributions.
Jackie Robinson and Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass and Shirley Chisholm. I mean, photos behind us, great legends who paved the way. Today we have Lovie Smith and Tony Dungy. We have Spike Lee and Barack Obama, a candidate for president of the United States.
And we have three black women who are presidents of Ivy League colleges.
That's correct. Ruth Simmons at Brown, and who are the others?
There's one at Brown, I believe there's one at Vassar, and there's a person at RPI.
And we have African Americans leading major Fortune 500 companies. Dick Parsons, Ken Chenault, Clarence Otis at Darden Restaurants are well known. Ursula Burns, an African American woman who just became the number 2 person at Xerox.
Well, let's say, what does the report say to the average black male who's, let's say, 21 years old? What does that report say about their future?
It says you are far better off if you finish high school. And it says if you didn't finish high school on time, do everything in your power to get a GED. It points to the fact that quality of life, economic outcomes are dramatically, and I underline dramatically, better if you get basic educational skills. The toughest conditions exist for those that did not finish high school. They are much more likely to be tied up in the criminal justice system. They're much more likely to be in the lowest paying jobs in our society and in our community. So it really points to, for the community, we have to focus on young boys.
Okay, well, let's take that point. The break point probably is the 9th grade, where half of the youngsters either drop out or don't finish high school.
Maybe earlier than that.
I was about to say, and then we regress back to the 4th and 5th grade, where the performance of African American boys tends to begin to decrease. So then the question, and I'm sure the report can't answer this in totality, but what are the signals that suggest that this is happening? It has to do with schools that are underfunded, teachers that are unprepared, parents who are not responsive, a climate in the community that does not value education. What are the triggers?
All of the above. All of the above are contributing factors, everything from parents to schools to conditions in the community. But we tried in our recommendations to say, what's the best important step we can do? That is early childhood education for all children of a high quality nature. 60% of young people are in early childhood education across the nation. It may even be a little bit higher for African Americans than it is for whites. But what that says to me when we look at our numbers is that those children that have an opportunity to participate in, to be a part of an early childhood education experience, are better prepared when they get to first grade, and they ultimately will do better. The question is to sustain it. So here's the Urban League idea. Let's have mandatory universal early childhood education for all. Not optional, but high quality early childhood education.
Now, when you say early childhood, you mean starting in the 4 years old, 3
I'm
years
talking about
old,
three, which is 3, 4 is pre-K, 5 is kindergarten. Start in age 3 in an environment of language, learning, and social development, and continue it so that our children have been in school for 3 years before they even get to first grade. Just the value of children knowing the alphabet, understanding their numbers, having understanding how to play with and interact with children, being exposed to adults other than their parents and caregivers in the community.
Well, of course, there was a program that was started back in the 60s called Head Start.
Head Start.
That
Great program.
that this could work. The question then is, what about the political will and the climate of this country to provide this? Because Head Start was seen as a program for low-income children, white or black. Middle-income people said, I don't really need it. My kids get it at home. I pay for it. Now, with the gap between the wealthy and the poor, or even the average citizen broadening so much, do you think we can get enough political will to establish universal pre-K?
We're going to talk about it and continue to talk about it and continue to talk about it because we need leaders that have the political will. The reason why is it's one of those ideas, one of those initiatives where no one disputes the results. Head Start is good. It doesn't touch enough people. Right now, Congress is talking about reauthorization or extension of Head Start. It needs to be expanded and funded so that every eligible child in the United States can participate in Head Start. But, you know, Dr. Brown, we take it a step further, and that is, let's move in the primary grades, perhaps as a start, to a longer school day, to a school day which matches a full day from 8 to 5. Let's look at giving our children more experiences with education, not less. Obviously, undergirding all of this is a necessity for equitable funding. But I want to try to get people to buy into the idea that a longer school day where you bring back music, you bring back art, you bring back physical education, you create an opportunity inside of the school day for children to have one-on-one tutorials, mentoring and the like, are ideas that our children deserve. What we also try to emphasize in this, why is this important? If someone's looking and says, well, I pay for my child to go to early childhood education, or my child is in a better school district and I don't see these problems.
Better translates upper income.
Upper income. Well, the upper income American has to recognize that their destiny and their economic outcome is also tied to the overall economic health of the nation. And I just believe that if we do not understand the fundamental need right now to deal with the burgeoning, the growing, the neglect of the poor that exists throughout public policy in this nation across the board, and to use sensible tools and sensible steps. I'm talking about things in education to prepare people, to sustain people, to make them self-sufficient. Then this nation is going to pay a tough price because we're in a competitive global economy with India, with China, and with other nations.
Of course, this just reiterates the problems we've known in Black America for a long period of time. The National Urban League was founded with the idea of helping to make opportunities for the blacks who come into the urban community, and the corporations and the foundations became involved with that. Then we have the Great Society program that had the same basic objectives. But then we get deterred by things like the Vietnam War, the Iraqi war that distracts the country's attention. And we overlook the fact that in this country we have more people in prison than any country in the developing world. We have, what, 14 million people, a tremendous number of people in prison.
It's a high number. It is too high, and we've got 600,000 people coming back to communities every year after being released from prison.
So then what does that say about a society? In the sense the Urban League, the NAACP, other groups in the black community are the conscience of our society. However, as we are no longer the #1 minority, Hispanics, immigrants outnumber African Americans. And other than the case where we have a riot and we raise hell, people tend not to focus intensely on this. Now, you have a tough job. You have a job of getting the attention of the corporations of this America, the legislators. What are some of the strategies that you and the Urban League are using to get their attention?
Well, I think one of the most important new things we've done in the last several years is we do a National Urban League Day on Capitol Hill. We do a legislative policy conference. It coincides with the release of the State of Black America report. So this year, in April, we went to the National Press Club. We released our State of Black America report, 2007 Portrait of the African American Male.
And very good cover, by the way.
Thank you, great artist.
Cover. Yeah.
And we went over to Capitol Hill with about 300 to 400 people and lobbied, or rather educated, met with members of Congress about our solutions, about our ideas about jobs, our ideas about education, our ideas about housing. So what we've tried to do is say that groups like ours have to become engaged. Community mobilization, sometimes a march, a protest, civic engagement through voting are essential and tactics that have to be utilized. But we have to do some new things, and engaging members of Congress with our ideas, with our thinking, with our solutions, and then sharing with them the data and the facts which support it, I think is the role of the Urban League in 21st century America. So we seek right now to really, hopefully, promote, encourage a shift in this country to domestic issues. We need a new, creative domestic agenda. We need a new, creative domestic agenda that's going to benefit America's urban communities, America's cities.
One of the things that gets people's attention is violence. And we have a tremendous amount of violence in some of our underclass communities, black communities. We have gangs, we have disruptions. And that tends to get the attention of the corporate community because they don't want their city to be torn up. Probably a classic example of this is Camden, New Jersey, where RCA has had their corporate headquarters forever. And Campbell Soup has had their headquarters. They're concerned about the fact that Camden is seen as the murder capital of New Jersey and so on. Once you get the attention of the corporate population, what can and should they do in cooperation with the Urban League?
They've got to invest in the communities where they are located.
You mean that means money?
That means money. It means their expertise in their people. They've got, because in those communities where they're located, those are not only their workers and their families, but the future workers. And in other communities where they may not necessarily have a plant or an office, is where their customers are. There's a growing new, I think, responsibility and obligation for major companies in America because they're so large, they're so huge, they're so pervasive, and then there's an opportunity for them to do so much importance and so much good. So when we get the attention now of corporate America, when we get the attention of Washington, D.C. and our lawmakers and legislators, this year we're talking to them about the black male and the fact that the black male whose unemployment levels are twice as high, whose high school dropout levels are extraordinarily high, whose numbers in terms of the incarceration rate or unacceptably high, are a potential untapped for this nation. We want people to not see just the half empty glass. We want them to see the half full glass, because my view of it is, and sometimes in America today, Dr. Brown, we are into the earnings cycle, election cycles, news cycle, state of mind, and attention span, is for us to think out 10, 15, 20 years. If you look out 15 years, half plus of the high school graduates, and probably 20,020 in America, are going to be from communities of color. They're going to be black, they're going to be Latino, they're going to be Asian and Native American. When you look at that, so it makes just basic sense that leveling the playing field and better economic outcomes in the future require that we do everything we can to give the best chances and the best opportunities for success to the communities of color, to the young men of color in America today. And the Urban League, this issue is an issue, talking about the black male makes many people uncomfortable. It makes people in our community uncomfortable. It makes policymakers uncomfortable. But it is important to the future of this nation that we finally focus on it.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about this workforce of the future. One of the things that's happened in the economy is that the low-skilled jobs have disappeared or have been taken by the immigrant population, many of whom are here illegally. That puts the Urban League in a difficult spot. We don't want to oppose new people coming into the country. On the other hand, if they undercut the labor market and make some of these entry-level jobs less accessible to our community, that gives us a push-pull. And I know the Urban League really doesn't deal with this as a major issue,
but it is a major issue.
It is a related issue. So what are some of the approaches that might be taken?
We've reached out to two distinguished African-American economists, Bernard Anderson at the University of Pennsylvania, Gerald Janes at Yale University. And most recently at our legislative conference, we held a panel, and we have asked them to examine the impact of immigration on the African-American worker. So what we're doing is taking an approach which says, let's not just look at the emotional side or the perception, let's look at the facts. So I'm hoping that very shortly they're going to deliver, if you will, a bit of a summary report to us, which talks about, so that we understand. The question is, if levels of immigration do have a negative impact on African American workers, if that is the case, or if the impact is small or medium or large, what is the correct response? What do we do? What I want to see is African American workers have an opportunity for upward mobility. That people may start in an entry-level position, but 5 or 10 years from now, they're not remaining in that position because there are initiatives in companies, initiatives in government, initiatives with community-based organizations to help them gain skills to move up. You know, we believe at the National Urban League, and I believe that economics is a civil rights issue of the 21st century. We are at a point now where protecting past gains, affirmative action, civil rights, voting rights, equal opportunity is critically important, but we have to work on building, on developing our community. We have to build assets, we have to build institutions. It's about economic development, it's about economic empowerment.
Which raises the question, are there two black Americas? Is there one black America where many people are doing well, have stable jobs and are moving ahead, and another black America where 40% are in poverty and are not moving up? What can be done to address that? Because I notice in talking with some African Americans, they say it's the fault of those who are down here that they didn't work hard enough to get up there. And you and I both know that it isn't a question of working hard, it's a question of resources and opportunity. What is the Urban League doing to address this idea, this issue of the two black Americas?
It concerns me. I look at it as one black America, but
we all black America.
It's a tale of two cities.
That's it.
That's a
better way of putting it.
Two communities, and it's a tale of a community that is much more upwardly mobile, that tends to be college educated for the most part. And then those that are stuck at the bottom, still 25% of all African Americans in this nation live below the poverty level. But I always think that those who are successful sometimes have to hold the mirror up, not only to themselves, but they also need to do an examination, a retrospective on their own life, on their parents and their grandparents. And you're going to find in most African American families that educational opportunity, determination, and hard work, doors opened by the civil rights struggles, has created the chance for people to walk through the door and up the ladder. No one gets it totally on their own. And we've got to disavow people of that notion that I get everything only because of me, totally because I'm smart and I'm the best. Now, I always say to people, you've got to have a sense of individual determination, a sense of individual responsibility and drive to be successful. But that in our community, because the badge of discrimination was not an individual badge, it was a collective badge. You were not held down because you were Roscoe Brown. You were held down because you were Roscoe Brown, part of
a black community,
a black America that was once enslaved and then segregated and finally is emerging as an important part of mainstream America.
Let's talk about those enduring values in the black community. One of the things that doesn't come across in reports like this is those eternal values in the black community of struggle, of community, of faith, of belief, and working together. I happen to believe that the most significant value we have in the black community is working together. And there's so many things that cause us not to work together. The economic competition, some of the lyrics in the music, some of the differences between blacks who came from Africa and those who came from the South. Is the Urban League doing anything about emphasizing those positive values in the black community?
You know, one of the things we encourage our affiliates around the nation to do is to lift up those who are doing good works in the community. Lift up those that are giving back. A very important part of our work is to lift up those, whether they are business leaders, community leaders, or just plain folk who are doing important work in a community. And I think that as a civil rights organization, we need to do much more of that. It's a fine balance, if you will, between diagnosis and pointing at the problem, which we always have to do, but also lifting up the success. I mean, I often say that one of the reasons why many of our young people have a predominance of images in entertainment and sports to look up to is because those who are successful in business, law, medicine, and the like are not present enough inside of our schools and inside of our communities. And I think organizations like the Urban League, our churches, whether it's other civil rights organizations, community-based groups, have to lift up those that are successful, particularly young people. And we also, those of us who are successful, have to tell our story. Everyone has overcome challenges, knockdowns, fall downs, little blood on their nose from time to time, because succeeding isn't easy.
As a matter of fact, as you know, I'm a Tuskegee Airman, and we go to many schools.
Congratulations on the
Thank you on the Congressional Gold Medal. And we talk to these young people. And the other day, I spoke at a school, and I got a little note from about 50 kids saying how much they enjoyed and were inspired by what I and my fellow Tuskegee Airmen did and had to say. So that means that one of the things you want to do is to get the police officers, the postal workers, the accountants, the civil service people into schools. But schools schools I talk to are predominantly black, into schools that are predominantly black. So that's an opportunity, and the State of Black America gives you and the Urban League an opportunity to push this ahead.
One of our important recommendations is this idea of instilling again in an important way the value of education for adults and parents to re-engage. It is the collective need for us to rescue our boys, rescue our girls, lift them up so that they can be successful. So I really want to encourage those that may be interested to go online at www.nul.org and buy this book. This book, The State of Black America 2007, is available in bookstores. It's available online. It's available in many, many places. I think people will find it to be impactful and helpful.
As we come to the close of the show today, I was thinking of your program, the 3 E's: equality, education, economics.
Yes, that's good. I may have to borrow that from
Okay, you
yeah.
borrow that. Today on African American Legends, we've been talking with Mark Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and we've been talking about the annual State of Black America report. Thanks for that great discussion, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Good.
Look forward to coming back.